Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another podcast episode. Man, I'm excited for this one. This is my interview with Jack the Rhino London. In this episode, I sit down with the Rhino, Jack London. Jack was a world champion powerlifter and professional bodybuilder. And in this interview, he shares some of the secrets of how he got there, some of his methods, some of his mental attitude.
What I call visualize. I call it visualization. You call it mind chart. It's the same thing. So I would spend 30 minutes to almost an hour laying in my bed with music on, and I would do two things. I would visualize myself doing the lift and completing the lift. And I know exactly how much weight is on there. I know exactly, and I'm visualizing. I'm going over it in my head, my technique. And then I also would visualize myself on the podium accepting my first place trophy. I've done that time and time again over the years. It's powerlifting, in bodybuilding, and even in the business world.
I'm very excited to present this podcast episode with Jack the Rhino London. So I like to kind of talk to people that have life experiences where they've overcome, where they've actually excelled and achieved. And especially, because a lot of people are aspiring to do that, and here's somebody in my existence that's done it. So I appreciate you taking the time to.
I appreciate you asking me. I'm all about helping and giving back, and like you said, with the history we have, it was my pleasure. I was excited to do it. And those principles you're talking about, they transcend life, right? It's not just athletics; it's life in general. And I have learned over the years to transfer the things that have helped me in athletics in life. So and so it makes me very happy to be able to, give this discussion and interview. Well, my name is Jack London. I hail from Abington, Pennsylvania. I went to high school with you at William Penn Charter School. Was a two-time national powerlifting champion and All-American at Temple University. Went on to be a world-class bodybuilder. Took third in the World Championships. Was Mr. North America. Won multiple state and regional bodybuilding shows. Was a professional bodybuilder. My last show was called the Night of Champions in 2006. And over the years, I've always been what I call the underdog, the guy who everybody said, you can't do that. And I've lived my life not only fighting that, but actually using that to my benefit. And I think that's probably why you want to talk to me today. I'm kind of used to it. It's something that's been ingrained in me. And I've learned to manage that and actually use that to my benefit. I'm currently married. I have a 16-year-old daughter. I have my own financial firm. I live in Avondale, Pennsylvania. Still lifting, still working out. And my other hobby is skiing. I do a lot of skiing.
Yeah, no, I saw the one picture you posted on Facebook of that's why I was like, you have to invite me down when you're doing legs. Because you had the stacks and stacks of plates, and they weren't those cushion plates you see in CrossFit and stuff like that to make it look like you're lifting a lot.
No, I was one of the first guys, first the three, I think, don't hold me to, I think three guys in the 80s to squat over 1,000 pounds. I deadlifted 960 and bench press 771. And that was raw bench, which means there was no shirt to help me. So I was invited to the World's Strongest Man competition in 1987. And I never made it. I got hurt training for it, but at that time was considered one of the strongest men in the world.
Like you said, you didn't really have somebody, or you didn't have that go-to person maybe at certain periods.
Well, yeah, when I was 12 years old, I wanted to start working out because I was a fat kid. And my parents were great, terrific parents, but there was no athletic background with either of them. And we were in Wildwood, New Jersey, and I went to my father and said, hey, Dad, will you give me some money for a gym membership? And he said, sure. He pulled out the money, gave me the money. I ran down the gym, Attila's Gym in Wildwood, New Jersey, and that's kind of where it all started. And I was lucky enough to be around some of the great bodybuilders and wrestlers and athletes of that time, but I didn't know who they were. And it really was just my, immersing myself in that world. There was really no background. People say, well, did your dad wrestle or did he work? No, nope. I kind of took it all on myself because it was just something that I wanted to do.
lot of this goes with your foundation and like your internal beliefs. Do you have an origin of where that comes from?
Oh yeah. My father. So my father was a Russian. Well, my grandparents were Russian immigrants, and my father was probably one of the hardest, strongest, toughest people that I had ever met, and he really, really was tough on me. And I did, when I was younger, I always could never really understand it until one day we had a discussion, and I sat him down. I said, Dad, why do you expect so much from me? Why is it that no matter what I do, it never seems to be good enough, that you want more? And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, well, because I know you can do it. And he always used to teach me, if you're going to, he used to say, Jackie, he used to call me Jackie. He used to say, Jackie, I don't care what you do, but if you're going to do it, give it 100%. If you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. So whatever it is I ever did, I always went after 100%. And, one of the things I wanted to tell you today, Tim, is everything that we're going to talk about, all the stuff that I've done, all the places I've been, successes, failures, I'm no different than you or anybody else. I just am willing to really show up and try. And, I could tell you stories and stories about bodybuilders I've met over the years who, frankly, were probably 10 times better than me, but didn't have the guts, didn't have the ability, and didn't have the just the fortitude to compete. They were afraid. They were afraid of failing. And, I can tell you, like Michael Jordan always says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. There's so many times where I see bodybuilders that were even better than me because they didn't have the guts to get up on stage and stand next to me. You can't beat me if you don't show up. That old saying, showing up's half the battle. It's really true. But my father ingrained in me, if you're going to do something, go at it. Don't be half-assed. And so it's, even to this day, everything I do, I push to the envelope. I really do. I don't do it consciously. I don't do it to impress people. I don't do it for money. I never did it for fame. I never cared about any of those things. I was always just trying to prove something to myself. And I loved bodybuilding, and it's funny because when I was a bodybuilder, when I was a powerlifter and I got into bodybuilding, we can talk about, everybody said I would never be able to do it. I was too big. I was 340 pounds, had a 44-inch waist. And when I had won the powerlifting championships, I was kind of like, okay, what's next? And when I decided to get into that, everybody was like, oh, you'll never do that. You're too fat. You're too big. And I lost 140 pounds in a year and ended up winning and qualifying for the Mr. America the first year that I was competing. I think I took like 8th, but I was there. You know what I mean? After everybody said you couldn't do it. So, and I want to go through your list, your question list, because I think they're, I was looking them over, they're very poignant, and I think there's some direct things I saw in there that I really want to touch on with you. But overall, I think the message that I want people to know is, you need to believe in yourself. Don't look to other people to believe in you, because they're not gonna. And don't look for other people's approval, because you're not going to get it. The only approval that matters is the one that you're looking in the mirror. And if you understand that and you do things for the right reason, and you stay, there's this old saying, staying true to yourself, which I think is a hokey statement, but it's really true. If you stay true to yourself and do things for the right reasons for yourself, you will be successful. And I can tell you, I'm living proof of that. I went from having a 44-inch waist to a 29-inch waist in about 18 months. And it was because that's all I wanted. That's all I cared about. That was my focus.
At moments in life when you get on the edge, and if you feel like you ever lost yourself and all, there's always that one thing that you know about yourself that you just, your grounding thing. So is that something with you? For me, it's breath or
it's bodybuilding. It's the gym. Listen, my life has not always been roses. I've fallen on my face just like everybody else. And the two things I'd say about that is, it's funny because the times that I have fallen on my face, people know me. They all said the same. Oh, you'll be fine. You will lift yourself back up because that's what you do. But for me, what grounds me is the gym. I mean, that's been my home. How long have I known you? Since I was in 8th grade, 9th grade, whatever. That's been my home since the 7th grade. It's the one thing. It's the one constant that has always been in my life. You know, there's this old saying, the iron doesn't lie to you. And, you know, it's true. It's you against the iron. For me, a lot of it is about control. It's about, you know, being able to control my own destiny. You know, look, and one of the things that we're talking about is success and what it takes. You need people to help you. I'm not saying you're on your own, but you need to be able to control your own destiny. And for me, it was always bodybuilding. I always knew that when things around me were out of control or not, you know, going the way I want, that was always my sanctuary.
Yeah, that's me too. I end up on my yoga mat or with my stick and stretching. And, you know, so when I need, like, even I find it, even if I'm in a meeting, sometimes I'll be, you know, stretching or doing something to connect with my physical body, just because that's the thing that then internally grounds, and it's like I'm doing it with breath.
Right. Now I don't mean, and some people when they ask me, well, you're following the Olympia, did you go? No, I don't go. It's never been about that for me. It's been about me. It's always been about me against me. And that's one of the reasons why I've been successful. That's one of the reasons why I'm able to stay physically, better than the average at my age too, because I always did it just because I wanted to, for the love of it. Yeah. It was always a hobby to me. It was never about being famous. And I think that's important because, a lot of people buy into this hype, especially with bodybuilding, that you're gonna win a show and you're gonna be rich and famous. And it's really not the case. And if that's really why you're doing it, you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. Yeah.
Like, what are some of the successful habits? And I'm listening to you, and then I know, we both have in common. We know Ralph Tam. So Ralph achieved, NFL for 11, 13 years.
One of the greats, and one of the first people I met at Tillis Gym when I was 12 years old. Yeah. And took me under his wing, and he probably doesn't remember. I remember though, and but yeah, I mean, look, successful habits of successful people, it's not rocket science. It's doing the same thing over and over again, and planning and focus. And again, I don't want to get too far off track of your questions because these are all kind of addressing your questions. But the first thing, it's about goal setting, right? If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. But then you have to really understand what it takes. Like with bodybuilding, people say, I'm 270 pounds. How'd you get that big? So, well, it's real simple. I trained and ate and trained and ate for 30 years. And I put on 3 pounds of real muscle every year. Over a 10-year period, that's 30 pounds. So somebody says, well, can't I put on 15 pounds in 1 year? No, it's impossible. And if you're not prepared to put in that effort, to put in that work, to put in the time and the commitment, and it's just like that in sales, in work, in life, in politics, everything. It's all the same. And if you're not willing to, if you're not in it for the right reasons, you're not going to last, and you're not going to put it in with the passion it needs to be as successful. Hey, listen, there's a lot of bodybuilders. There's a lot of powerlifters. There's only some that rise to the level, right? And the difference is that. It's really that simple.
Yeah. I mean, that you're describing consistency of training and of attitude and of doing. And then the other thing that you and Ralph, the original thing why I said that was, you both have complete life outside of the sport. So for Ralph, he doesn't even watch NFL football. He's out in Colorado doing his life, embedding in it. Other people are living vicariously through him. Here's you, champion powerlifter, champion bodybuilder. Now that I'm in here, and you're like, I don't even know where my pictures are. Yeah, I got some trophies downstairs, Kel. I love that because I also believe that all this, you opened up with, our training that we do in sport and all that other stuff, we stop a lot of times because we think we're not the athlete anymore, but we have to take those attributes and now apply them to our life outside of the dojo.
Well, it's funny because I was always a popular bodybuilder with the fans, not because I was a good bodybuilder, but I was also had a life outside of bodybuilding. So the people within bodybuilding, they were always very impressed with the fact that I had a finance, background, that I was working in the world of finance, and that I was, had something else going in my life. The people in finance and in my business world and in politics, they like me and respect me because I was a champion in athletics. And I've been able, and it's not easy to do, to fuse the two. There's a bridge that you have to, it's almost a reinvention. You have to reinvent yourself. However, you don't want to lose yourself, because those qualities, like you're saying, they transfer, and that's how you become successful. It's the people who don't transfer, because you see a lot of athletes try to go in business and it doesn't work out for them because they just don't know how to do that. For me, bodybuilding was always a hobby. I lived with Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler was a 4-time Mr. Olympia. I'm sure you've heard of him. And in 1992,
Not the NFL Jay Cutler.
Not the NFL Jay Cutler. I'm sorry, the bodybuilder, Mr. Olympia. There's 2 Jay Cutlers. And they're both great guys. But the one I'm talking about, he went off to pursue a life with bodybuilding, and he became one of the best bodybuilders ever. Made a lot of money, did fantastic. For me, I wanted to go back to school, and I wanted to have a life outside of bodybuilding. And I'm very happy I did that. I'm not unhappy. I was never Mr. Olympia, but that's okay. I've had many successes, and believe me, me and Jay still talk, and there's no difference between he and I.
What are some of the other things you do for balance? Because you're describing a balanced life. I know I see your badass pictures of helicopter skiing, dude, and that's awesome.
A lot of people don't know this about me, but I've been skiing since I was about 8 years old, and I
remember from my Penn Charter days.
You do remember, right? Yeah, sure. So it's just been something that I always loved to do. Being out on the mountains, just the freedom of going. It's what I call the pull of the gravity. You're going fast, but you learn how to, again, you're pushing it to the envelope, and you're right on the edge of being out of control, but you're not out of control. It's just something I want to say I'm addicted to it. I love it. I also like going to the Poconos and just skiing the blues with everybody too. Just being outside. There's something about that. As far as the helicopter skiing goes, yeah. A couple years back, I started racing. I got some coaching up in Vermont and became pretty competitive in racing. I was ranked #1 in the state in Delaware for giant slalom. I believe it or not, I qualified for the nationals, for the Masters in giant slalom with NASTAR. But it got very competitive. Again, I started to lose myself in that, and it was all about the times and I stopped doing it. And I started doing what we call extreme skiing. There's a lot of guys out there much better than me, but I have had my share of fun of jumping out of helicopters, and I heli skied Mount Superior and other places in Wasatch Mountains and British Columbia and Whistler. And
is there fear with that kind of thing, or is it kind of the same as if you're going to go out there and you have to do a lift for the first time and you're in the unknown? Is it because it's all about the unknown? So if there's fear, how do you manage it?
Well, there is fear. There's always fear. There's always fear of failure, death, getting hurt, no matter what you do, losing your job. You have to learn to use that, harness that. I harness that fear, and I use that to my advantage, okay? I live on that fear. My success, I would say, is more about the fear of failure than it is the enjoyment of success. Some people will say that's not a good thing, but it's the truth. The fear of heli skiing is, it's simple. It's a very dangerous sport. I know my abilities, so it's a fear, but it's also a huge satisfaction when you know you can ski any mountain in the world. I can go to anywhere. I can go any mountain and get me to the top. I don't care how you get me there. I will ski down it. I'll be more scared flying up than skiing down. And that's a personal satisfaction. It's not about video, TV, and friendly with some of the top extreme skiers in the world too. I mean, they're much better than me, but they share the same quality. We became friends because of their respect for me from bodybuilding and vice versa. I got to meet Darren Rawls, who's a world downhill champion. He was fantastic fantastic skier. And these guys are just like me. But anyway, getting back to skiing, yeah, that's a personal, just something I like to do. It's fun. It's not about showing off. It's about, conquering.
Yeah.
As soon as I do actually master something, I'm done with it. And I need to go find something that I have to master. So when I won the powerlifting championships twice in a row, I was done. I remember, and my coach was upset. Everybody was like, what are you doing? I said, well, I've spent the last 24 months winning every powerlifting meet I've ever was in. I didn't take second in one of them. I've never taken second in a powerlifting meet. It was time to move on. So to your point, there's a hunger for something new and something more challenging.
How do you balance the identity that comes with these different things? You're identified as the star athlete. Now you're identified as the champion powerlifter, and that's like bodybuilder. How the hell can he be a bodybuilder from a powerlifter? How the hell can he be a champion or unbelievable skier from all that other stuff? How do you?
Oh, that's the most fun of the whole thing. That's the best part of being who I am, because first of all, I'm not out to prove anything to anybody, right? I just have fun. I just be me. And you've known me for 30 years, you know that. But it's really fun to talk to somebody and have them look at me and go, you can't ski. You're 270 pounds. And then take them skiing and watch the look on their face as they see me, because I'm a fairly agile skier. So as far as the powerlifting and the bodybuilding, I mean, everybody said I would never be a bodybuilder. No, they all said everybody was a naysayer. You're too big, you're too this, you're too that, you're too fat, you're too old, you're too young, you're too ugly, you're too everything. Whatever that opinion was. And I really, really love hearing that stuff, because that's probably been the most satisfaction I've gotten out of all of it, other than personal, is showing people how wrong they are and watching them come back to me. I had a guy in politics, I'm involved in politics, and he came to me and he says, I never realized who you really were. He says, you don't talk about yourself much. I said, well, if I have to tell you how great I am, I'm probably not that great. But if you tell me how great I am, then I made an indelible mark. And that's kind of the fun of it. It's not to put it in people's face, but what I love is I talked to somebody from years ago. You know me when I was in high school. And people come back to me and they go, wow, you really did it. You really did it your way. You marched to your own drum, your own beat, and you really did it. Today is a perfect example. It really makes me happy, not just to do this interview, but to do it for you, because you've known me since I was a young kid. So to have your respect is very important to me. It makes me I get a lot of satisfaction out of that.
These type of peeps are my tribe, because I feel like I'm in the same mentality with a lot of that stuff. I've had medical sales identity, yogi, whatever it is. It's like I'm always just changing. Filmmaker, dude, whatever.
I told you, you were my hero in high school. You were the man. You were larger than life to me. You were, and I'm not just saying that for the camera. You walked around with this big chest and your big bench presser. And hey, listen, you remember Darren Hunter, and you were the guys I looked up to, and I thought, wow, I want to impress these guys, so you're right though. It's not about, and that's really a big part that I want to make sure that everybody knows. It's not about being something special. If you do what you want to do and you do it right, you will be something special. Yeah. And if you have to tell people you're special, trust me, you're not. You're not. And I think that's what's, and again, we're really eating into these questions. I want to do the questions too, but that's been my key to longevity too, is with the weights. I'm 47 years old and I could compete again. I've been asked to compete. I got asked to compete again 2 years ago. I'm done. For me, I'm done. But if I wanted to, I could. I have the physical ability to do it.
How's your body now feeling? Or is it, and then you just have you know how to manage it because you're a master manager of our bodies, like I am too.
I have minor back issues. I'm a master manager of my body, and I also take care of myself.
Do you have any internal secrets to your own self-healing that like I have my own?
Oh yeah, well I think and I want to talk about meditation stuff, because that kind of goes back to powerlifting. But one of the things, and I know it might sound silly, is just learning to stop and enjoy your life, and saying, and every once in a while I'll stop and I'll go, wow, this is pretty cool. Like something will happen. Something happened recently, and I came home and I said, to my wife, Debbie, I said, Debbie, this is pretty cool. Like, I never expected to be where I'm at. And she's like, yeah, it is pretty cool. And just taking those moments and learning to be happy. You know, people are really, really concerned about what they don't have, and they're not really focused on, you know, what you do have. You know, and I'm guilty of that. I've been guilty of that in the past. But as I get older, I begin to realize, you know, it's not about stuff. It's not about, you got to enjoy your life. You know, and I tell Debbie, you know, when I pass away, when I die, I don't want to have a funeral. I want to have a bunch of people, a big party, and I want people there telling crazy stories about Jack and what he did, and having a great time. And remember, you know, I don't want people crying.
There'll be a kegger of mine, definitely.
Exactly, because I can tell you this: when I go, I will have done everything I can possibly do. I will, so it'll be okay.
You don't appear to be leaving anything on the table.
No, exactly, and I'm not gonna. So, you know, win, lose, or draw, right? Because that's what it's about. I'm gonna put it on the table, and I'm gonna go after it. And you know, I have this old saying, and that is, I do not want to live my life saying what if. I'd rather try something and fail than wonder what if I would have succeeded.
Can you tell me a little bit about like what breathing for performance means to you, and you can apply it to your balls out training days, or even now, the moments you either notice, hey, my breath's off a little bit, or my breathing's off a little bit, or this is what I do. These are some of my techniques.
Well, I mean, obviously with weight training, you're gonna be cognizant of your breathing, and if your breathing's off, it's really gonna hurt you. And it's gonna hurt you in a few ways, you know. But it hurts you mostly, for me, with the strength. So we were talking about powerlifting, and one of the most important techniques when squatting is when you go down into what's called the hole. And you hold your breath for a split second, and you know exactly, over years of doing it, exactly when to release. And we were talking about that release from the diaphragm, which will help you drive back up. So it'll actually help give you strength with that explosion. Breathing with bodybuilding is critical because you're doing high reps. So, you know, you need to make sure that you're breathing properly in and out on the negatives and the positives. And if you don't, trust me, you're going to feel off. But breathing also is important with skiing too, because, you know, skiing is a fairly cardiovascular exercise. And, you know, when you're on a 50-degree angle hill, and you even mess up a little bit on your breathing, you could really mess up off your edge of your ski, and it could cause a big problem. Because when you're skiing edge to edge, you need to breathe in when you turn, out when you turn back. And there is a technique to that too. And there's a split second in between that you do hold your breath when you hit the edge. So there is breathing technique there too. Breathing is in everything I do. I mean, I think it's critical. I told you I did a little bit of boxing, nothing competitive, but that's where I learned a lot of my breathing techniques, was, you know, from the punching. Because when I first started doing it, I didn't know how to do it. I would get very tired very quickly. My coach showed me that the reason why I was holding my breath when I would punch. And he showed me how you have to release, called the boxer's breath, or whatever they call it, where when you hit, you're breathing out. When you strike, you're breathing out. And as I did that and learned that, I started, because I was doing it to get in shape for skiing. Every summer I would try something different to get myself in cardiovascular shape for skiing. And that one summer I did the boxing. So it definitely carries through everything.
Yeah.
And it'll also
I love the boxing training. It's pretty good.
Oh yeah. And listen, even when you're aggravated with normal life, that can really help you. You know, sometimes life overwhelms you, and sometimes it's good to just take a moment and just breathe. And, you know, they say that as a saying, but it's true. I'll tell people, take a breath. Just take a breath. Relax. Take a breath. And that's, you know, symbolism, but it's not.
Yeah.
I'm training with somebody now, and when he would bring the weight down and then push it up, he's not breathing out. And then I saw someone breathing out when they were pushing it up or bringing it down, the opposite, which, if you breathe out, it's going to help you push that and move that weight, and it's also going to help you with your energy, like we said with the boxing. So, you know, you see people who hold their breath through the whole motion, which is a big mistake, right? You do want to hold your breath right at that spot where it's called the hole, where you're just right when that, like you're talking about, that one split second, boom, and then you release, right? The release is really the key, right? Because you already have the air in you. It's the release that's important all the time.
Yeah.
anytime I'm showing somebody.
I'm just saying, like, if there's
There is a
examples
difference. When you're powerlifting, whether it's a deadlift or a squat or even a bench, you're going to have an explosive release. Okay, so you're gonna breathe in when you're doing the negative, and then you're going to explode out when you're doing the positive. Posing, actually, breathing is critical with posing, because when you're posing, you're trying to show your muscles at their maximum. And there are certain poses where you literally have to breathe out to get your muscle to, like, especially in your serratus and intercostal, you literally have to, right? And I would do that as a practice and literally be very deliberate about that breathing out. And that helps not just with the pose and the flex, but guess what? It also helps because it gives you the oxygen and the energy to continue to pose. Posing is a very, very strenuous thing. People don't understand. It's very, you're only doing it for 90 seconds, but you're shot for days from that.
Tell me a little bit about how or how either you applied or did it, how you controlled negative thoughts or just your thoughts, or instilled that positivity to make yourself a champion.
So that's a big piece. It's a huge piece that a lot of people miss out. And I remember being in college, and I had a girlfriend, and she would call me about 9 o'clock every night. And I would always tell her, I can't talk to you because it's my time to what I call visualize. I call it visualization. You call it mind chart. It's the same thing. So I would spend 30 minutes to almost an hour laying in my bed with music on, and I would do two things. I would visualize myself doing the lift and completing the lift. And I know exactly how much weight is on there. I know exactly, and I'm visualizing. I'm going over it in my head, my technique. And then I also would visualize myself on the podium accepting my first place trophy. I've done that time and time again over the years in powerlifting, in bodybuilding, and even in the business world. I visualize being successful in a transaction or in an endeavor, in any kind of endeavor where I'm visualizing myself winning, being that person, getting that trophy, getting that done. And I think that's a big, 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 big problem in our society. Too many of us talk ourselves out of trying anything because we're afraid. We don't visualize ourselves getting it. We visualize ourselves failing. And I have an old saying for that to people. Don't tell me what you can't do. Tell me what you can do. Stop giving me reasons why you can't and give me some reasons why you can. Because there's an old saying. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're probably right. So you can talk yourself, and I am a huge believer in willing yourself into success. If you believe you can do something, my mother used to say, Jackie, well, she called me Jackie too. You can do anything you set your mind to. And it's a hokey thing she'd say to me, but it's really true. If you believe in yourself enough, because the only difference between people who are super successful and people who are average is that one little piece. It's that visualization. It's that belief. A lot of people actually don't think they deserve to be successful, subconsciously. And they will subconsciously sabotage themselves. It's a crazy thought, but it's true. Me, I'll see somebody doing something. I'll see somebody winning a contest or be a great bodybuilder, and I wouldn't be jealous of them. I'd say, wow, that guy's great. But then I would say to myself, if he can do it, I can do it better. 2 hands, I got a heartbeat, I can do it. And I probably do it better than him because I'm going to outwork him. I believe that. Now, if you look at somebody and say, wow, how can I ever do that? I can never do that. Then you won't.
Goal setting's an interesting thing. I think a lot of people struggle with even being able to get to the point where they can pinpoint what the goal would be, and then even if they can pinpoint it, they've never done it, so they don't even know how to visualize the steps to get there. Any suggestions on any of that kind of stuff? Or?
Yeah. If you don't know where you're going, I can promise you're never going to get there, right? So it's not even a matter of how to get there. It's a matter of, okay, where do I want to be? Here's where I want to be. Now, what are the steps that I need to take to get there? It's not a matter of if. It's a matter of what, when, and how. I know I'm going to be at point B. I'm at point A. Now, what do I have to do to get to point B? And it's really not any more complicated than that. But if you don't believe that you can ever get to point B, then you won't. Trust me, you just won't get there. So, you know, if you really, and a part of it is desire, right? Part of it is, I mean, you know, I'm breaking it down pretty simple, but there is a piece of passion, right? There's a piece of discipline, and there's also a piece of sacrifice. You have to be willing to sacrifice things, you know, that you may want for that. So how important is that too, right? That's another piece of it. So I used to diet for bodybuilding shows. I would diet for 8 weeks. So people started dieting for 10 weeks. So I dieted for 12 weeks. They would diet for 14 weeks. So I would diet for 16 weeks. And it went on and on and on. And people would say to me, you know, I'd be at a dinner and I'd be eating pizza. And I would have been dieting for 3-4 months already. And somebody would say to me, don't you crave anything? Don't you crave anything? And I'd say, yeah, I crave something. I crave winning. Because eating a pizza, that's not a priority for me. Sacrifice to some people, to me, not a problem. It wasn't important. If you can't learn to sacrifice and learn to have discipline and learn to put in the work, I mean, obviously those are important keys too, before the goal setting and before, you know, along with, there's got to be a component of that as well. You know, trust me, if you sit back and wait for things to come to you, they'll never come. I can promise you that. You have to go out and get them. You have to be willing to go through the pain and the suffering of getting what you want. And that's pretty much my life story of overcoming barriers and jumping over, you know, all the things, all the negativity and all the, oh, you can't. Can't means won't to me. But I don't let myself get bogged down with negativity. I recognize it. A lot of negativity to me is, I don't want to say jealousy, but it's almost, it's people that are, they want to do it. It's like, okay, so here's a perfect example. Somebody will come up to me and say, you know, I want to lift weights, but I don't want to look like you. And I'd say, don't worry, you won't. Don't worry, you won't. And if you think about that, you know,
Yeah.
you know, so it's that's the story. And you know, again, the breathing and the meditation is important because that ties into the positivity, you know, and believing in yourself and focus and really being clear and understanding. And I've done this, by the way. I was invited to several conferences in Chicago years ago about this in business. And they stood around and they said, you know, everybody stand up and tell us your goals. And everybody had these, and the guy invited me, I was like a ringer because I had done the class and he knew how I was. And I'll tell you this funny story. So he says, you know, somebody stands up, guy stands up, says, I want to be, you know, a successful financial planner. Another guy says, I want to help people, you know, build their lives and grow their wealth. And another guy said something very ambiguous as goals. Because there's a difference between goals and what's the word I'm looking for? There's goals and then there's, I'll come back to that. So I stood up and he says, Jack, tell me a goal you have. And I said, well, my goal is a 1992 Ferrari Testarossa white with white leather interior. And he goes, okay, and can you visualize yourself driving? I said, yeah, I can. I do it all the time, shifting the gears. And about 12 months later, I had one. So I got rid of it, but I had it. My point is, I understand the focus piece, and it has to be very specific, and it has to be very, very important to you as a person. Otherwise, something ambiguous. I want to be the greatest bodybuilder in the world. What does that mean? What exactly does that mean? You know, I want to be Mr. Pennsylvania. I want to be Mr. North America. Ding, 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 ding. Right? People have to have that component, and I think that the meditation, and I think that helps, especially with negativity. I really do.
One of my questions was controlling energy leaks. Are you aware of any energy leaks in your life? People, places, things,
Absolutely.
either just physical stuff you do or bad choices?
Absolutely. I've had relationships in my life that were negative leaks. Well, being a person who doesn't like to fail at anything, sometimes it takes time to recognize them, and after you do, it takes time to realize the difference between failing at a relationship, for example, versus understanding that this is not a good place to be. But as far as leaks go, I mean, there's leaks every day, right? There's problems. Nobody has a perfect life, right? You know, my favorite character is Rocky. My wife makes fun of me. I watch Rocky. I can watch it over and over and over and over again. And the reason why I love Rocky is because I identify with him for many reasons. One of which because he's the underdog, right? He's the guy who tells everybody says he's never going to win. But he says, you know, it's not what life is not what's thrown at you. It's how you deal with it, right? He says it in a different way. He says, you know, it's not how much you can hit, it's how many punches how much you can take, and keep coming and keep coming and keep coming forward. It's the same thing, right? It's the same point. So the way I deal with the leaks, as you put it, is, I mean, you have to manage that stuff. You have to understand what is the effect on you, right? Because you're in control. Again, it's not what's thrown at you, it's how you react. So the best way to handle those leaks is how you react to those leaks, whatever the problem is. It could be a relationship, it could be a money problem, it could be any number of things. And let me tell you, every day there's leaks, every day. People make me laugh because they see me and they'll talk to me and they're, oh, you have the perfect life. No, I don't. I don't have the perfect life. I have problems just like everybody else. And I have issues and things to deal. I got a 16-year-old daughter, and you know, nothing is easy. And especially when you're the type of person like me who's always going after things that are harder, right? I was a police officer 25 years ago. You knew this, right? So when I was a police officer, I got in trouble one time. I dropped my flashlight in the guy's car and I dented it. So they complain and blah, blah, blah. So the chief calls me in the office and he says, what happened? I tell him. He says, Jack, he goes, don't worry about it. He goes, things are going to happen. He says, if you're out there working and doing and making things happen and serving the public, you're going to piss people off. To your point, when you're pushing it, the way I put it is, the harder you push it at life, the harder it's going to push back. So the point now it's coming back to me. The point is that if I was the type of person that just liked to sit at home and watch TV, then I wouldn't have as many leaks, right? It's when you push and you try and you really scratch and fight for what you want that more stuff is going to happen. Negative, I mean. And so you have to learn to be able to manage that. And you have to be able to understand that, you know, nothing is ever perfect. Nothing is ever going to be, you know, life is all about ebb and flow, and you're managing of it. What I would tell a 20-year-old Jack London is keep your feet planted, but reach for the stars. And that's an old saying from the radio, but it's really true. And what I mean by that is, you know, my whole life, I've had people tell me, you can't do this. And when I became a bodybuilder, even my parents hated the idea. And that's what I'm going to talk about in a minute. But you know, you got to go after your dreams. You know, you can't live your life vicariously through other people or what other people think you should do. With that said, you need to understand that you have to be realistic about, you know, life and about, you know, the world around you. What do I mean by that? I was a professional bodybuilder. I had 6 sponsors at any given time. I went back to school, finished my degree, and got it and started a career in finance. And I did that because I knew, as great as bodybuilding was, that there would come a time where I wouldn't be able to do it competitively and earn an income from it. It was never, the point was never to make money anyway. However, you have to be realistic about who you are, what you are, and where you're going. And if you do that, then you'll learn to be happy. Because if, you know, I see a lot of people doing a lot of things and none of them are happy. You know, you got to learn to be happy with what you're doing. You know, as I get older, I actually get happier because I feel more comfortable about myself. And, you know, you make mistakes, you do things, and you realize, well, you know, I've learned more from my mistakes than I have my successes. And so I'm going to tell you a story about, it's actually the 21-year-old Jack London. And 21-year-old Jack London was a police officer in Bucks County. And I had just won the Mr. Pennsylvania. And I had a dream. And the dream was I was going to be a sponsored bodybuilder. I was making $17,500 as a cop. I got on a plane, and everybody laughed at me. I said, I'm going to go to California. And my friend Joe and I went, and we both said, Jack's not coming back. Jack's going to take me to the airport, and he's going to stay in L.A. The first day I got there, I was lifting weights with Samir Banu, who was 1983 Mr. Olympia, who was one of my heroes. And there was an accident in the gym, and there was an ambulance. Long and short of it is, this gray hair, salt and pepper hair fellow comes up to me, and he started asking me questions. Who are you? And I said, okay, I'm a police officer from Philadelphia, and I want to be Mr. America. And he says, well, I'm a bodybuilding talent scout, and I might be able to help you. Now, I thought he was full of BS, but I figured, okay, I'll play along. I said, well, what do you want? And he says, well, why don't you come to my office when you're done working out, and maybe we'll talk about me helping you. I said, okay, well, where's your office? Now, this is Gold's Gym in Venice Beach. He says, well, if you go around outside, you go up the steps, my office is in the second floor. I said, oh, are you affiliated with this gym? And he says, well, I own the gym. I said, you own this gym? And he says, no, I own Gold's Gym Enterprises. His name was Ed Connors, and he was one of the 3 owners of Gold's Gym Enterprises. I dropped the weight and said, let's go, I'm ready to talk. You couldn't write this. We go up to his office. He looks at me, he says, take all your clothes off. So, okay, when in Rome, let's do it. I take all my clothes off down to my underwear. I start posing for him and showing him different poses that he's asking me to do. He says, okay, put your clothes back on. He starts making notes. He pushes a paper to me and says, here's what I can do for you. He was going to pay me more money than I was making as a police officer, let me live in one of his homes on the beach in Venice Beach, and basically all I had to do was train for shows and wear Gold's Gym stuff. You couldn't write it. I said, where do I sign? He says, no, I want you to go back to the hotel. I want you to call your family. So I go home. I don't go home. I go back to the hotel. I call my mother, who, by the way, hated the fact that I was a police officer to begin with. And I said to her, Mom, I'm not coming home. She says, what are you talking about? So I just got offered a contract. I just got discovered. And they're going to pay me more than I'm making as a cop to bodybuild. She says, well, you're crazy. Why are you going to do that? You just graduated. You're president of the class in your police academy. I said, Mom, I can always be a cop. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I can always come. What's the worst that can happen? I come home and be a cop again. And she says, yeah, I guess you're right. And that's how I became a professional bodybuilder. So the funny part of that story is I have a degree from Temple, you know that. I have experience, you know that. Nobody ever asked me about my degree at Temple or my experience. You know what they asked me about? My success as a bodybuilder and my travels, because bodybuilding has taken me around the world, and it really has molded who I am mentally, physically, and every other way. I'm not what you would call a typical bodybuilder. I am an educated person. Not that they're not educated, but generally, I have a combination of I'm fairly cerebral. But the interesting thing is, when I talk to people, that's what they want to talk about. So, did I make the right choice? I don't know, but I tell you this: I got some great stories. I got great memories. And I would never change a thing I did. I'm glad I did what I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's your 21-year-old Jack London. I want people to look at me as a leader and someone that they would want to emulate. I want to be someone who inspires people, someone who is known to have integrity, and someone who is known to be the type of person who went after it, whatever that is. I mean, I want people to say, that's the kind of guy I want to be around. That's the kind of guy I want to emulate. And, I would also like, for people to learn from me and to, if I inspire one person, and I've had people literally email me and call me and say, it was because of you that I did this. It was because of you, Jack, that I did a bodybuilding show that I would have never thought of doing. That would really make me happy. I would really love to leave a legacy like that. I don't care about money and leaving money and making money. I mean, obviously when you have money, it makes it easier to say things like that. I'm not living in a dream world. However, I think when it's all said and done, if I can leave some kind of an indelible legacy like that, then I really would be happy.